Welcome back to Show Me the Nuggets. This is Eduardo Trinidad from the team at Digital Triggers. On behalf of Joe and the whole Digital Triggers and Invisible PPC family, we would like to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season. Now, in today's episode, we're featuring the top book recommendations we've had on the podcast in 2020. Joe ends every podcast with a question. What's the one book that's made the biggest impact on the way that you do business and why? We've had a ton of amazing recommendations, but we feel that the entrepreneurs we're featuring in this bite-sized episode made the most compelling cases on why we should be picking up these books. Here we go.
So when I have great guests here that I really admire, I like to ask them, like, what's the one book that you think has made the biggest impact on the way that you do business, right? As you look at Roofer Marketer, like, what's made the biggest difference? What book has made the biggest difference and why?
So the book that's made the biggest difference for roofer marketers is the Seven-Figure Agency Roadmap by Josh Nelson, man.
That's awesome.
I mean, honestly, that's the book that's the formula that we emulated to build roofer marketers. So that's the one that has that one has been the most impactful on roofer marketers specifically.
Perfect. So Josh was on the podcast. We'll make sure to link that up in the show notes, and then also link out to his book as well. And when you just look at the way that you do business today, right? Do any other book recommendations, right, come to mind? Maybe not specific for Roofer Marketer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I have like maybe a trilogy, right? I'll call it my trilogy, right? Like it started, in the early 2000s with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. So people who aren't familiar with that, it's a conversation about being an employee, self-employed, a business owner, and an investor, and the differences in mindset of each. And that really helped me to understand the path, right? You may start as an employee building a skill set, move into a self-employed position, who a lot of us agency owners have been, right? We're doing the work that we're, and doing the sales and doing the account management and doing. And then the transition into becoming a business owner and to provide, putting together a structure in your business and delegation and things like that. And then, where the end goal is to become an investor, right? To the businesses that you build, building up enough capital to where then you can become, you can invest that money into, into the future with it, whether it's real estate or business or whatever you're investing in. So that was it. And then really over the last couple of years, one thing that got me, one book that got me was kind of focused on things, because I for many years I tried to be a perfectionist, and I always wanted everything to be right when I wanted to launch a new product or a business, and so the Lean Startup was one of those core books that, it was like, hey, do something and test it, right? And just let the market speak to you about what they want, and evolve what you do around that. And then I would say that love them or hate them, the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone was one of those a psychological shift, that it takes 10 times the effort to do what you think, or that 10 times of what you think it would have taken, right? If you think it'll take 10 phone calls, it'll take 100. And just having that mindset on a daily basis that it's going to take 10 times the effort that you think it's going to take puts you in a different place, right? So that's kind of the
100%.
The trilogy there.
I like the trilogy, man. Thank you so much. And all of those great books. Instead of asking you to recommend 3 books, we do something a little different here. I want to ask you, like, what's the one book that's made the biggest impact on the way that you do business, right? The way that you live your life, the way that you look at your business.
That's an easy one for me. It's a book called The Go-Giver. And it's basically, a lot of the stuff there you talked about. just basically adopt this giving mindset, and that things, come back to you. There's just like 5 laws in the book. It's just a story about a guy who's like trying to make his quota, and like some people that he meets along the way that teach him these like 5 lessons. And the 2 lessons I really liked out of it were just the very first law is offer more in value than what you take in payment, like always. And that doesn't mean like underselling yourself. That means realizing that when you do that, people want to work with you more, people want to recommend you and all that kind of stuff. And then like the other thing is like, so in terms of like what you give and what you're able to give, the most successful people are the ones that are able to scale the amount like they give. And so for me, that's posting on LinkedIn and reaching up to like 5 digits of thousands of people, or through my email list, just hitting a lot of people with some value. So if you're able to start by giving on a small scale, like whether that's a comment in a Facebook group that really helps somebody, or able to like scale it like myself or people who are even much larger than me, that's when you start to basically create this network of people who have you top of mind and are ready to recommend you at any turn. So for me, it's never about like sales and like directly approaching people and giving like an elevator pitch. It's always about planting the seeds, and then inevitably people just contacted me and say, hey, loved your posts on LinkedIn, or like, hey, so and so recommended you, or I subscribed to your newsletter, really enjoy your content, I've got this project. That stuff is really starting to almost overwhelm me right now, and I'm just like really like careful about what projects I take on, and doing that has given me the luxury of like only working with clients who I think are going to have a really high probability of success and also higher value.
What's the one book that, as you look at your business today, you think has made the biggest impact, and why?
It's got to be such a cliche answer, but it's got to be Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Perfect. Why?
I mean, that book has. So I'm actually looking at a book that I'm getting ready to read for about the 7th or 8th time, just to kind of go through it, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was the book that kind of got me started. What Cialdini did was took that book and added, for that part of my brain that kind of relies on the fact. Like, I can read How to Win Friends and Influence People and go, yeah, that passes the smell test, but where's the psychological evidence for that? And Influence has that. So it's like, the thing about Influence, that's what I'll say about Influence. It's the best marketing book ever written. It's not a marketing book. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's the best customer service book ever written. It's not a customer service book. It's the best sales book ever written. It's not a sales book. It is the best parenting book ever written. It is not a parenting book. It is the best marriage book ever written, and it's not a marriage book. That's saying a lot about a book. I mean, it's all about influence. It's all about persuasion, and it's got the nerdy stuff that really appeals to that nerdy side of me, the psychological studies and all that, and I can kind of geek out on that, but it's also got the practical applications. And I mean, it's also the book that led me into that world, learning about persuasion, learning about reading all of his other books. So it's like, if he hadn't written Influence, I wouldn't have read Yes, and I wouldn't have read The Small Big, and I wouldn't have read Persuasion. I wouldn't have read any of his other books. I wouldn't have that. So, and it's been the lens through which I have read every other marketing or sales. And I've read at least 200 marketing, sales, and, entrepreneurial books. That book has become the lens through which I see all those. And I see, like, nobody's teaching anything that Robert Cialdini didn't write about. It's actually very rare. It's fascinating. You watch, like, if you do your webinar this way, I'm like, yeah, that's like page 82 of Influence. Yeah. And I can remember these things, I'm like, yeah, he wrote about that in Yes, and he referenced what he wrote in Influence, so that's the book, man. It's got to be Influence.
That's awesome, man. Heck yeah, dude, that's awesome. This has been an amazing podcast, Nate. One of the best I've recorded so far. I just want to say thank you, and I want to wrap it with one question. You've been a breadth of knowledge, and shared a lot of nuggets and a lot of tips through your journey over the years.
I'm curious, at the end of every podcast, I feel like every host says, all right, Nate, what's the number one book that you would recommend, or what's the 3 books that you would recommend? So I like books. I'm a voracious reader, but I have a problem. I either like read the first chapter and I can't put it down, or I read the first chapter and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. So I go through a lot of books where I read that first chapter and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do it. And I've taught myself that it's okay not to read a book from start to finish, right? And I've gotten over that. So I always like to ask guests, right? When you look at the business that you've built, right, and you look at the life that you've built today, what's the one book that you think has made the biggest impact on the way that you do business, the way that you operate, the way that you see things, and why?
So I'm gonna say a book that you may have read, and that a lot of people probably haven't, who have not been in this world, or they've written it off because it feels like it's part of a brand and it's not that interesting. But it's No BS Time Management by Dan Kennedy. Have you read that?
Man, I believe I have, but it was so long ago. It was probably
so long ago, right? He's the godfather. So yeah. That book oriented me in how I was going to build and run a business and be a businessman. Obviously the lazy answer is the Bible. Like, I'm a man of faith. And so like that influences everything that I do. And Dan Kennedy is a militant atheist. So so that's a fun combination, right? But I love his perspective on guarding your time. And he was one of the forerunners of that concept for entrepreneurs. His stuff in general, people don't realize how much like gold is in there. The old school direct response guys, they knew what they were doing. So many of the gurus out there are intellectual great grandsons of these guys. And they are midgets compared to these guys, because when you have to do direct response marketing using direct mail, where everything that you send out costs $1, then you've got to dial it in. And that's the world that I started with. And when we were sending out these 29-page trade reports and the 8-step direct mail sequence, that whole shebang, right? Those guys, like most of the internet marketing gurus now, are like spouting off the reheated leftovers of Dan Kennedy and Zig Ziglar and Claude Hopkins and Ogilvy and all these guys that had to do it in a totally different environment. So anyway, No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs by Dan Kennedy it's a short book. It's like strong beer, but man.
So when I have a chance to interview somebody on the podcast, obviously I admire them. I like what they're up to. That's why we have them on the show. So I always like to ask guests, instead of asking you to recommend 3 books, which I feel like is like what everybody does on a podcast, we like to do something a little bit different. And I like to, like, looking at your business and your life now, what do you think has made the biggest impact? What book do you think has made the biggest impact on the way that you do business, or the way that your business is resembled and what it looks like today, and why?
The one I'm going to recommend is the E-Myth, and that's probably just because it's so central to systems. It's just understanding and getting to the point as a business owner. Everybody realize just because you can do the thing, because you can run the AdWords account and you do it really, really well, doesn't necessarily mean that you can run an AdWords agency. There's a range of other skills that you need to master. And the more I've done this, the more that I've realized it's actually oftentimes what holds you back is being able to do the thing. So I almost urge the business owner to set up a product line in their agency for something that they don't know how to do, and purposefully not learn how to do it. So for us in the digital agency, a big breakthrough was we started selling video services under a sub-brand, Melbourne Video Production. I don't know how to turn on, I probably know how to turn on the camera, but I don't know how to edit in Premiere and do all that sort of thing. So that meant I had to build that part of the business without me doing the thing. That's the biggest one. And the E-Myth is really great at helping you to understand why the systems are so important.
I love that, because you never end up with the monkey on your back then, right? You never end up being the one, I'll just jump in, I'll just fix it because it'll be faster. You never end up in that situation because you don't know how to do it. So it's a little controversial, I would imagine, to some people to say that, but I completely get your viewpoint. And it definitely makes sense, especially from the systematizing type of roles and what we talked about, and getting other people to buy in and to figure it out, to get them to help build out the systems and processes and get them to really help build the outcomes. In that context, man, it makes total sense.
Thanks for tuning in and showing me the nuggets. If you've been enjoying the podcast and find our content helpful, please visit our Apple Podcast page, hit the subscribe button, and leave us a review. Joe and the whole team have been working hard to bring more value to the show. Your feedback will go a long way in helping us make the show better and reach a wider audience.